I thought betrayal was something that happened to other people. Until the morning I opened the door and saw my daughter's face. It started like any other morning. Wednesday, 7:12 a.m., Houston, Texas. May. A warm drizzle tapped against the windows, the neighbor's cherry tree barely visible through the streaks of rain. I poured myself a coffee, stepped onto the porch, and checked my email. Nothing urgent. A few notifications from work, a couple of newsletters I never read. Peaceful. Uneventful. That's how I liked it. My name is David Harper. I'm 48. A retired military man, 20 years in service, mostly stationed overseas. After retiring, I moved into the private sector. These days, I work as a security consultant for private agencies, corporate risk assessments, security protocols for logistics companies, occasionally training staff. I live in Houston, Texas. I've been married to Susan for 17 years. We have a daughter, Allison. She's 16. Smart, driven, always reading. A good kid. Susan and I met through friends back when I was stationed in Virginia. She was a school administrator, sharp, organized, warm in a distant kind of way. We dated for a year before I proposed. Life with Susan had always felt reliable. Not full of spark, but steady. And I respected that. I respected her. I thought we respected each other. A few days ago, Susan told me she'd be heading to Dallas for a 3-day education seminar. She manages curriculum development now, district level. Seminars and conferences are part of her world. I barely looked up from my laptop when she told me. I just said, "Text me when you get there." We'd gotten used to this rhythm over the years. Short separations, independent routines. It worked for us. Or at least I thought it did. That Wednesday, I was working from home. My consulting contract allowed me flexibility, and I had a backlog of reports to review. Around 9:20 a.m. my cell rang. I didn't recognize the number, but it had a local area code. I picked up. "Mr. Harper? This is Principal Jennings from Oakview High. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." "No, not at all. Is everything all right?" She hesitated. "Your daughter, Allison, checked out of school this morning during first period. She said she wasn't feeling well, but when we tried to follow up, she didn't answer. We just wanted to be sure everything was okay." I felt a shift. A low throb beneath the ribs, familiar from years ago, that same tension before stepping into uncertain terrain. "Thanks for calling. I'll check in with her." I hung up. Tried her phone. No answer. Tried again. Nothing. That's when I stood up, put on my jacket, and drove home. 15 minutes later, I was walking up our driveway, heart steady but mind racing. I didn't expect to find the front door slightly open. Inside, the house was quiet. I called out once. "Allison?" No response. I moved to the stairs and found her sitting on the hallway floor, back against the wall, knees pulled to her chest. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen. "Allison, what happened?" She looked up. Then she said the sentence that changed everything. "I caught Mom with Uncle Brad. In your bedroom." My mind couldn't immediately compute it. I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I forgot my gym clothes, came home to grab them. I heard noises upstairs. I thought Mom had come back. So I went up, and I saw them. They were in bed." "Your bed." She was crying now, quietly. Trying not to fall apart. I knelt beside her, wrapped an arm around her shoulders, and just sat there. I didn't ask any more questions. I didn't need to. Brad is my brother. My younger brother. 2 years younger, a former Marine like me, though he left the Corps after 10 years and went into private contracting. These days, he runs a security logistics firm out of San Antonio. We've had our differences, but we were close growing up. He was at our house often. Barbecues, birthdays. Family. I sat with Allison for several minutes until her breathing slowed. "Did they see you?" She nodded. "They didn't even try to explain. Brad told me I shouldn't be snooping around. Mom just stared. Then he tried to grab my arm. I ran. My jaw tightened. Did he hurt you? No. I'm fine. But she wasn't. And I wasn't. I helped her to the couch and brought her water. I told her to stay put and rest. Then I stepped outside, into the drizzle, and called Brad. He didn't answer. I called Susan. She picked up after 2 rings. Hey, I'm in a session, can we? You're not in Dallas. And you know exactly why I'm calling. Silence. Get your things. I want you out of the house by tonight. I thought I'd felt betrayal before, in the field, among so-called allies, but nothing had ever cut this deep. And this time, I wasn't just fighting for my pride. I was fighting for my daughter. I spent the rest of that Wednesday in a fog. By noon, the rain had stopped, but the air hung heavy. Allison was asleep upstairs, wrapped in the same blanket she used as a child. I sat in my truck, a black 2018 Silverado, engine off, hands still on the wheel. I didn't know what I was waiting for, maybe a sign, maybe clarity. Brad still hadn't returned my calls. Susan sent one text. Please don't do anything rash. We'll talk tonight. That was it. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove. I headed north toward Tomball. No particular reason, just needed the road. Familiar turns, old gas stations, a Whataburger I used to stop at after deployments. Somewhere between Tomball and Spring, I realized I was making a loop. Going nowhere. By 3 p.m., I was back home. I reheated some leftovers, made Allison tea. She didn't eat much, just picked at her food. I sat across the table from her. The silence between us wasn't awkward, it was shared pain. She said, Are you going to divorce her? I answered, I don't know yet. But she won't be staying here. She nodded. Then added, What about Uncle Brad? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stood up, walked to the sink, and rinsed her plate. I said, I'll take care of it. At 5:47 p.m., Susan pulled into the driveway in her silver Toyota Highlander. I saw her through the blinds, her usual business casual blazer, hair pinned up like always. She lingered in the car for a full minute before stepping out. I opened the door before she rang the bell. I said, Don't talk. Just pack. She looked at me, no tears, no fight. Just a quiet kind of shame. She walked past me into the bedroom. I followed her down the hall, but stopped at the door. She said, You were never home, David. Even after you left the army, you never really came back. I answered, That's your excuse? She said nothing. Just started pulling clothes from drawers. I sat on the porch as the sun set, watching neighbors water their lawns, kids riding bikes. Normal life. In our home, normal had ended. Susan came out around 6:30 with 2 bags and her laptop case. I said, Where's Brad now? She said, San Antonio, probably. He hasn't answered me either. I asked, How long has it been going on? She hesitated. 6 months. Maybe more. I nodded. That hurt more than I expected. I thought it might have been a moment of weakness. A mistake. But months? I said, If you try to explain it again, you'll make it worse. She stepped off the porch, walked to her car, and drove off without looking back. I didn't move. Not until Allison opened the door behind me and whispered, She's gone? I nodded. She sat beside me. We just watched the sky darken. At 7:41 p.m., my phone lit up. Brad's number. I picked up. He said, We need to talk. I answered, You're damn right we do. I thought the worst was over. But when your own brother looks you in the eye without a trace of guilt, that's when you realize the storm hasn't even started. Thursday, 8:05 a.m. The coffee was still brewing when the doorbell rang. Allison was upstairs getting ready for school, her face still puffy but determined. I opened the front door to find Brad standing on the porch, wearing his usual casual arrogance, jeans, leather jacket, and that same smirk I'd grown to hate in the last 24 hours. he said. We should talk. I answered. Not here. Get in the truck. We drove in silence to a small diner off FM 1960, Kelly's Country Cookin'. The kind of place with checkered tablecloths and laminated menus. A place we used to visit as kids with our dad on Saturdays. We slid into a booth near the window. The waitress, Marcia, older, with tired eyes, recognized us. She said, Well, if it isn't the Harper boys. Haven't seen y'all in years. Coffee? We both nodded. Brad said, Look, before you say anything. I interrupted. Don't. I'm going to ask once, and you better not lie. What the hell were you doing in my house? With my wife? He looked away, scratched the back of his neck. He said, It wasn't supposed to happen like that. I said, But it did. 4 months. He said. Susan came to me. It wasn't just sex, Dave. She felt alone. You were always gone, even after you got out. You were still deployed. Just in your head. I took a breath. Counted to 5. I said, So that justifies what you did? To your own brother? He didn't answer. The waitress brought coffee. We sat in silence. Then he said, It's over. We talked last night. She's moving to Austin. I'm not going with her. It's done. I laughed, short, bitter. I said, It's not over for Allison. And it's not over for me. He leaned in. He said, What do you want from me? An apology? A fight? You want me to bleed in the parking lot so you can feel better? I didn't answer. I just looked at him. Really looked. The same eyes I'd grown up with. The same man who once took a beating for me in 7th grade. Now sitting across from me like a stranger. I said, I want you out of my life. For good. You stay away from me, from Allison, from anything that even touches my world. You got that? He nodded. Quiet. Finally. We finished our coffee without another word. I paid the check. We parted ways in the parking lot. No handshake. No farewell. Back home, Allison was waiting by the stairs. She said, Was that him? I nodded. She said, What did he say? I answered, That it's over. She said, Do you believe him? I shook my head. Doesn't matter. He's done with us. The rest of the day passed slowly. Work emails. Groceries. The mundane things you cling to when your world's been split down the middle. That night, I reheated leftover lasagna. Allison actually smiled once. A small thing. But it meant the world. Friday morning, 6:20 a.m. Phone buzzed. Unknown number. Mr. Harper, this is Officer Lynn from the Harris County Sheriff's Department. We're calling to inform you there's been an incident involving your brother. I sat up. The room spun slightly. What kind of incident? He was found unconscious outside a bar in San Antonio. Looks like an assault. He's stable, but he named you as his emergency contact. I stared at the floor. The past had a way of not letting go. I thought I'd buried the mess. But some things refused to stay quiet, and the truth was about to claw its way back into my hands. Friday morning, 6:43 a.m. The sun had barely cleared the horizon when I climbed into the truck and set the GPS to Methodist Hospital in San Antonio. 3.5 hours south on I-10, not counting traffic. I told Allison I'd be back before Sunday. She didn't ask questions. Just hugged me tightly before I left. The drive was quiet. No music. Just the sound of the tires humming against asphalt, and the occasional rattle of an old water bottle in the cup holder. I passed the Buc-ee's in Luling around 9:15 a.m., stopped for gas and a breakfast taco, then kept going. I arrived at the hospital at 10:38 a.m. Parking was tight, the sky heavy with clouds. Spring in Texas is unpredictable like that, warm air pressing down like a hand on your back. At the front desk, I gave my name. The nurse said, He's awake. Room 321. Brad looked like hell. His right eye was swollen shut, stitches on his cheekbone, a split lip. Still, When I walked in, he managed a smile. He said, "Guess I look worse than I feel." I answered, "What happened?" He shrugged, winced. He said, "Walked out of a bar. Got jumped. That's all I remember." I sat in the chair by the window. The blinds were half closed, casting lines across the tile floor. I said, "Random?" He hesitated. He said, "Might have been work-related. One of our clients stiffed a subcontractor. Things got heated." I didn't press. I'd seen enough operations to know when someone's holding back. But I let it slide. "For now," he said. "They took my phone. Wallet too. Cops say it was probably a setup." I asked, "What do they know?" He replied, "Not much. I didn't tell them about the company. Figured less is better." I stood up. I said, "You're getting discharged today?" He nodded. I said, "Good. You'll be in Houston for a while. You can crash at a motel. Don't come near my house." He didn't argue. Just stared at the Ford drip. Back in the lobby, I pulled out my phone and called a guy I hadn't spoken to in 5 years, Mark Velez. Former Army Intel, now a PI in Houston. He answered on the third ring. He said, "Harper. Didn't expect to hear from you." I said, "I need some digging." "Quiet. Brad's company, who they're working with, what they're hiding. Can you do that?" He said, "I'll get started. Expect something by Tuesday." I drove to a motel near Loop 410 and booked Brad a room under a fake name. Left the key with the nurse. Then I headed home. Allison was on the couch watching an old episode of Blue Bloods. She said, "Was he okay?" I answered, "He'll live." She nodded. Then she asked, "Are we done with him?" I looked at her. "My daughter. My anchor." I said, "Soon." That night I couldn't sleep. I sat on the back porch with a glass of bourbon and watched the neighbor's sprinkler hiss across their lawn. The silence was thick. My mind turned over everything: Brad, Susan, the hospital, the assault. At 12:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. "You don't know what Brad's gotten into. But you will. Soon." I stared at the message, my pulse steady. Took a screenshot. Then deleted it. I thought betrayal ended at my doorstep. But the deeper I looked, the more I saw, it wasn't just personal. It was dangerous. And I had no idea how deep it went. Saturday. 9:12 a.m. The morning was overcast, thick clouds hanging low over the skyline. I took Allison to H-E-B on Westheimer to restock groceries. She moved quietly through the aisles, checking items off a handwritten list while I kept one eye on the other shoppers. I couldn't shake the feeling we were being watched. At checkout, I noticed a man in a gray hoodie linger by the exit. He didn't buy anything. Just loitered. His eyes met mine for a second too long before he walked out. I didn't say anything to Allison. No need to scare her. Not yet. Back home, I installed 2 new cameras, one over the garage, one by the back gate. It was an old reflex. The more chaos outside, the more order you build around your perimeter. At 1:47 p.m., my phone rang. "Mark Velez." He said, "You sitting down?" I answered, "Go." He said, "Your brother's company, Falcon SEC, has been moving more than just security contracts. There's shell core out of Nevada and Delaware, funds funneled through Costa Rica. And one name keeps popping up, Viktor Mladenov." I said, "Eastern European?" He replied, "Bulgarian. Tied to smuggling ops out of the Gulf. Weapons, sometimes data. Homeland's been watching him, but can't pin anything down. Your brother's listed as a logistics partner." I paced the living room, heart pounding. I asked, "Does Brad know who he's dealing with?" He said, "Hard to say. He's either in over his head, or he's made peace with it. Either way, he's dirty." I thanked him and hung up. My mind was already racing. I opened my laptop and started pulling records, public filings, shipping manifests. By 4:30 p.m., I had 3 pages of names, transactions, and connections. Then I got a call from an unknown number. He said, "If you want to keep your daughter safe, stop looking." Then the line went dead. I stood still. Every instinct screamed one thing: protect. I spent the rest of the night double-checking locks, running background checks, encrypting files. I put a tracker on Allison's phone and added a duress pin. Sunday, 7:02 a.m. The air was still. Birds chirping like nothing had changed. I took Allison for breakfast at a diner near Memorial Park, Clancy's. She ordered pancakes. I watched the door. She said, "You're different. Like back when you came home from deployments." Not angry. Just prepared. I answered, "I need to be." She said, "Should I be worried?" I said, "Not yet." When we got back, I noticed the back gate was unlocked. I always locked it. Always. I checked the cameras. Footage missing. From 3:12 a.m. to 3:31 a.m. That night, I slept in the living room. Rifle under the couch. Boots by the door. I thought I was protecting us from a scandal. But this wasn't about broken trust anymore. It was about survival. And someone had just stepped onto my lawn. Monday, 6:11 a.m. I hadn't slept. Coffee sat cold on the kitchen counter. Outside, the street was quiet, too quiet. Even the morning joggers seemed to skip our block. I'd reviewed the camera logs again. Nothing new. Just that dead space between 3:12 and 3:31 a.m. Whoever breached the system knew what they were doing. At 7:20 a.m., I called Mark. He said, "I was about to call you. Got something you'll want to see." I replied, "I'm listening." He said, "Brad met with Mladenov last month. In person. Not just contracts, face to face. Surveillance caught them at a place in Austin. Ukrainian-owned cigar bar called Nyas." I said, "You have footage?" He replied, "I'll send a clip. But it gets worse. There's a bank transfer from Falcon SEC to a shell company in Malta. 500 grand. 3 days before your brother got jumped." I felt the weight of the news drop into me like a brick. I said, "You think the beating was retaliation?" He said, "Or a warning? Or both?" The footage came in 20 minutes later. Grainy, but clear enough. Brad at a corner table, Mladenov lighting a cigar, a briefcase between them. No mistaking the intent. Deals were being made. At 9:03 a.m., I got a call from Susan. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail. She said, "David, I know you hate me, but please, something's wrong. I got a call last night from a blocked number. They knew about Allison. Said we were being watched. I don't know what Brad's gotten into, but please, protect her." I played it twice. Then called her back. I said, "Where are you now?" She said, "Staying with my sister in Round Rock." I said, "Don't leave. Don't talk to anyone else. If they call again, record it." She said, "Are we in danger?" I answered, "If you're asking that now, it's already too late." At noon, I met Mark in a parking lot off I-69. He handed me a folder. He said, "This is all I could pull. There's more, but we're poking a hornet's nest. Mladenov's connected to men who don't play by any rules." I flipped through pages of documents, corporate ties, off-the-record shipments, overlapping names. Then I saw one file that made my stomach turn. Brad's name listed as co-signer on a security manifest that included modified rifles. I asked, "You think he's moved weapons?" He said, "Looks like it." I nodded slowly. I said, "Then I need one more thing. I need a way to disappear. For Allison." He didn't ask questions. Just said, "I know a guy. Give me 48 hours. That night, I told Allison to pack a small bag. Essentials only. No electronics besides her phone. She asked, "Where are we going?" I said, "Somewhere safe. Just for a few days." She didn't argue. Just folded her clothes with quiet precision. At 11:47 p.m., as I stood by the window watching headlights crawl down the street, my phone buzzed again. Another message. No number. Just one sentence. She's not the only one we're watching. I'd built my life on preparation, on discipline, on control. But now I was outflanked. And the people I loved were marked. This wasn't just about family anymore. This was war. Tuesday. 5:58 a.m. Sky pale gray. The city hadn't stirred yet. I'd already showered, packed a go bag, and placed it by the front door. I loaded the SUV with emergency supplies, fuel can, med kit, burner phones, extra IDs. The kind of prep I hadn't done since Afghanistan. Allison came downstairs in silence. No makeup. Just jeans and a hoodie. She carried a single duffel. She said, "Are we leaving now?" I answered, "In 10. I walked the perimeter one last time. Checked the locks, scanned the street. Everything looked normal. Too normal. That's what worried me most. At 6:17 a.m., my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Brad. He said, "You were right. I'm in over my head. I didn't know how far it went. But they're not after me anymore. They're after you. You need to disappear. Now." I stared at the screen, then deleted the message. By 7 a.m., we were on I-45, heading north. I took back roads through Conroe, then into the pine woods near Huntsville. Mark had set up a safe house there, a cabin off Lake Livingston. No neighbors for miles. We arrived at 9:12 a.m. The cabin was small, plain, but secure. Steel doors. Satellite backup. A rifle mounted above the fireplace. I said, "This will keep us safe." Allison looked around. She said, "How long will we stay?" I replied, "As long as we have to." That afternoon, I got another call, unknown number. He said, "You're smarter than your brother. But not smarter than me. You think you've won? You've only delayed the inevitable." I didn't reply. Just hung up and blocked the number. By sunset, I had a plan. A real one. I called Susan. I said, "I need you to go to the police. Give them everything you know about Brad's company. You're a witness now." She said, "They'll come after me." I said, "They already are." That night I sat by the fire. Allison was upstairs. The wind rattled the window panes. Somewhere deep in those woods, a coyote howled. At 1:43 a.m., headlights approached. A black SUV. No license plate. I grabbed the rifle and stepped onto the porch. Two men got out. Dressed in black. Tactical posture. One held something in his hand, possibly a radio, maybe a weapon. I said, "Turn around. Leave now." One of them said, "You don't have to die tonight, Mr. Harper. Just give us the files." I replied, "You came to the wrong house." What happened next wasn't a negotiation. It was instinct. Two shots rang out. One struck the porch beam beside me. I returned fire. One man went down. The other retreated. Tires screeched, taillights vanished into the dark. I didn't sleep after that. Just waited for dawn. The next morning, I drove to a local ranger station. Reported the incident as a trespassing. No names. Just enough to register the danger. And then I called a journalist I'd known for years, someone I trusted. I said, "I've got a story. Government contracts. Shell companies. Smuggling. I've got names. Proof. And I'm done being quiet." Because this wasn't just about revenge. It was about taking something broken and forcing it into the light. And if they wanted war, they'd chosen the wrong man to fight. Subscribe if you want more stories based on real emotions, about real men who don't shout. They act. Cold. All the way.